Hey everyone, welcome back to Cignals Trading Academy. This is lesson number 8, and today we are going to discuss breakout trading. And it's very common price action philosophy, breakout trading, right? You hear people talk about it a lot, I'm sure. You might see people on Twitter, using these price action techniques in order to enter and exit trades. So, how do we differentiate between breakouts? How do we know if something's for real or if something's ultimately just a blip in the market and going to reverse on us? Well, that's knowing the difference between a high volume and a low volume breakout. And in order to differentiate between the two, we need to know what relative volume is in the market that we're trading. So this applies to any market. It could be Bitcoin, it can be S&P 500, ETH, whatever. So let's look at this hourly cluster of Bitcoin on Binance futures. So if you notice here, let's just go ahead and get an idea. If you look right here, this little pocket right here, this is relatively low volume compared to our average volume, which we see right around here. A lot different in terms of 1 and 2. And if you look at high volume, 3, much different than 1 and 2. And let's look at this right here, a perfect example of a high volume breakdown. You had prices trading at basically the highs of this move, more or less. Like, this move didn't go much higher. It was 48 and change. So here we are at 47.7. We start to see this, like, however many hours of low volume here, quite a bit. Nothing really happening. We had 1, 2 up here, on higher volume, couldn't really move down very far. Started to get some type of absorption moving back up. But look, it's on low volume. It's not going to play out, guys. This is something that will be reversed. Whenever you see this, okay, low relative volume compared, again, you have to know your market, okay? This is not something you just jump into and, out the gate, without ever having done the analysis, you could differentiate between what's low volume, relatively speaking, and what's high volume, relatively speaking. Being that I'm in this market every single day, I understand right here is my lower volume, relatively speaking, on the time frame that I'm looking at. And when I look to my left, I can see that is the case because this is my average volume for the most part, decent amount of volume in the market. You see the gyrations happening in this pocket here. Not crazy moves, but, nonetheless happening on average volume, not in exactly high, but not exactly anemic either. So you see moves happen here on average volume, and then immediately next couple of hours over, we have kind of a dead amount of volume in the market, not a ton of volume at all. So that's relatively speaking to this. And then when you look over here, we see this is relatively high volume compared to 1 and 2. And if you look, this move happened on high volume. So what did we get? We got a move sideways that went nowhere for many, many, many hours after this relatively, I guess, average volume play started to resolve itself, right? Because we didn't get the move higher that we wanted to see here. We started to move on, average volume. You had a trigger point right here, but we couldn't really get above. We tried pushing, did not work. We immediately fall back down into the middle of the range where we, were trading previously for many hours before that too. So now, with that being said, we go down a few hours, we start to notice volume picks back up to the average, more or less, and then starts to exceed it, and then very much exceeds it again. We see here, again, many hours of nothing. We pop up, try to take out highs, can't on big volume. We get this little cluster of, of average volume come back in, then bigger volume comes back in, right, on this green candle. Not exactly huge volume, but relatively speaking, a lot more than we're accustomed to seeing. You get people pump faked out here. So you had this NPOC here as well from this rotation lower. Um, Big volume. People are trying to play that break, right? But what happened? It reversed. It completely, after taking out NPOC and trying to rotate into the 48s, sellers continuously are stepping back in. I mean, it's very, very evident, okay? We went over this in the previous video. Sellers stepping back in, okay, and brought us down quite heavily. Brought us down about $2,000 per coin, realistically, okay? And this happened on bigger volume. This is, if you're looking to get short, this was your play because on big volume, you tried to attack the highs, you could not do it. Even cracking NPOC could not do it, and then started to rotate lower on big volume. That's a terrible arrow, but you get my drift, right? Started to rotate lower on big volume. Again, here, big volume, big volume. Okay, so we got that initiative played out. We got that initiative to play out pretty well here. So if you were looking to sell, it was a perfect bear trap. Excuse me, perfect bull trap. You had, you know, dead volume for many hours. Then all of a sudden you get some pickup in volume, right? You see, we start to rotate through NPOC, so you're getting bulls a little bit, you know, you're getting them ready to try to control the initiative, to take the initiative. But what happens is you immediately get VWAP turning down. Okay, you can't get that rotation. Sellers step back in, hit them real hard on big volume. Now this is big volume, relatively speaking, to what we know is average, right? Because let's look back even. Let's close this up. Okay, see bigger volume all over here. Average, big volume is mixed in there. Okay, and then you get this anemic volume again. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Like, you see where the anemic volume is. Okay, here's the anemic volume, average volume, big volume. Okay, and then you can see here it's the same exact thing. Okay, anemic, very anemic, doing absolutely nada. Okay, let's look. If you look here, this is just going completely sideways to nowhere on absolutely dead volume. Okay, dead volume. You get these little fake breakouts, whoop, and then they reverse, because whenever you get these low volume breakouts, they tend to reverse where they trigger from. So let's draw a line through here, right? We try to break out, can't do it, doop, comes right back below, right? Here we go, same thing. A little bit of pickup in volume, we start to move up, volume dies, we come back down to retest the mean. But what happens here? The same thing that happened over there. All of a sudden, big volume comes back in. And here's our triggers, our previous low volume triggers, right? It launched from our previous low volume trigger, okay? And now, with this big volume, we start to make that rotation higher. You get this dip down in VWAP, and then immediately something comes in. Volume comes in to change the initiative, to change the market psychology around these trigger prices that previously failed on low volume breakouts, right? Because price tried, couldn't do it. Price tried, couldn't do it. Price tried, couldn't do it. So you faked out the bulls 3 times on a low volume pump. And what happens was we came back and retested the mean, which is exactly what you see in this balanced trading right here. You had some reversal. You see the NPOCs, signs of just like very choppy trading in the interim, catching people off sides, cutting them up, and all that good stuff. Then all of a sudden, relatively speaking, we had big value come in. Okay, here are your triggers across the board for the that's a terrible line. So let me try that again. You had or you had these trigger prices for many hours, right? Here, 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 trying to get that breakout, couldn't happen, okay? But ultimately, again, we launch on high volume from those previous triggers, okay? And we start to rotate higher. And this was the start of the move a few, 2 weeks ago, maybe at this point, from the 43, 44K region all the way up to 47, which was something that we were calling for in our Discord to premium members, to our legacy and advanced tier members, through our private channels. We were saying that once we do see the big volume step back into the market, we should get a nice rotation finally through 47, ultimately try to grind through 49 to 50K. And we got it, okay? It was literally that simple. All we wanted to see was that big volume came back into the market at some point, because again, we were watching. It's not like we do this in a vacuum. We're watching this, okay? Like hawks. And we see, here's your relative volume, your relatively average volume, big volume, okay? Even though we had big volume, couldn't really get a breakout of substance here. We start to reverse, volume dies for a little bit, comes back in again, can't really reverse. These are fake outs, not breakouts, okay? They come back and they retest the base, and we cannot rotate. And we were calling for it, like we said. We're looking for this volume to finally come back in. We want to see sellers run over on big volume, capitulating at any price above 47K, which is exactly what happened here, okay? We finally got this area of relatively high volume, okay? And we blasted off through 47K finally after weeks of waiting for it. And ultimately, from there, we held it. You see what I'm saying? Like before, we couldn't hold these pumps. We would keep falling. We would keep falling. Here, we extended the range. We kept extending the range. We kept forcing the capitulation of sellers, or even not the capitulation. We forced whatever's resting there to either get run over or lift and go to a higher ask, which is exactly what happened. Okay, so that's your main difference here, is that when you're looking at the two types of breakouts, you have to know what your relative volume is, comparatively speaking, to your anemic volume and your high volume. So now that we've got that out the way, you see what happened here. We got this nice pump higher. We started to go sideways, okay, a little bit. We had an unfinished auction. We tried to, sellers tried to take us down, and buyers just completely lifted us off and extended the range pretty much to where we topped out, which was right here in the low 48s, holding this line in the sand, this low volume area, which was now acting as resistance, because now, support, because now what's going to happen is when you get these big breakouts on big volume, we're going to start gapping through levels, and we're going to start not really gapping through, we're going to start moving aggressively through these levels, just forcing, like I said, capitulation or the lift of asks. And then you get these low volume areas that act as a barrier in the interim, as the move is consolidating and building momentum and continuing its run, if you will, in the direction that it started. So here, what we see is this low volume area, which we can see pretty clearly on the profile right here, was providing pretty good support for a good period of time, right? And then what happened? You start to see here the move goes back to the mean volume-wise for the most part, okay? Because this is, relatively speaking, your average volume on an hourly for Bitcoin on Binance Futures, right? So you saw the move went up, okay? We started to die down volume-wise, okay? Couldn't really continue pushing anymore. You got the VWAP shift, started to fall. We were holding along UFA, trying to get a reversal here, couldn't happen. We were getting a nice amount of absorption in this area, which ultimately provided support and kept us lifted. We started again to get, now again, this isn't a crazy amount of volume, but relatively speaking, we started to see more volume come in. It wasn't as heavy as it was in the beginning of the move, so it wasn't as pronounced in terms of the rotation off these levels. We did, though, pull back a little bit from there, okay, into the range again, for the most part, this previous range. And these lines are terrible, so bear with me here, just, for context. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying here. Pull back into the previous range. Again, a little bit more of, your, again, not so much high volume, but relatively speaking, higher volume. And we started to lift again, okay, which we created our top, if you will, for this move here, and started to immediately lose the momentum. Buyers willing to pay these prices in order to keep the move going. So again, start to fall back into the range of previous trading from the breakout. And what happens is we start to look for a bottom. Now we're getting higher volume coming in on the downside, which is, not so much really. We don't want to see that as we're moving higher and building a bull case. And from there, it starts to die down a little bit more. Okay, it starts to die down a little bit more. Average volume. We go sideways until again, initiative comes back in, bigger volume. But now the problem is that we're not able to crack these highs. We're getting to 48K, but we can't extend. So what happens is we try for some hours, right? Like here, here, ultimately here. Can't do it. Okay. And we start to now fall back in line with the previous range, as you can see, right? So we start to fall back in line with the previous range, but now it's not happening on anemic volume. It's happening on decent volume, like, pretty high volume. It's starting to fall. So which is why we're taking out these lower volume levels, because again, we're talking about how when we get these momentum moves, these breakout moves, usually what happens is that we gap through levels, or we start to extend through levels as the resistance becomes less pronounced, and you get these lower volume parts of the profile, and they usually act as support and resistance until something changes, which is happening now. Something's changing. We're getting bigger volume coming in, but instead of it being to the upside, it's to the downside. Here as well, to the downside, right? Bigger volume to the downside, bigger volume. Okay, so these are, and again, we have people resting in this area. We've had people resting in this area for a bit. So we know what's on the tape, what the tape is telling us based upon what is happening now in terms of volume and the actual psychology of these moves. And you can see it play out. Buyers are getting exhausted at highs. They cannot crack 48K convincingly the way they did 47 on big volume, big momentum. And force asks to lift higher in order to clear the way so they don't get run over or capitulate outright, and then add to the momentum by covering their shorts. So we get the low volume areas ultimately tagged, and we start to look for a new initiative once again, now that this has kind of died out. So here we are now. We've taken this out on big volume. Volume dies down a little bit, and if you notice, every time volume starts to go back towards the mean, we do this, right? We start to like form a trading range. Okay, it's pretty obvious at this point. Okay, I hope we see that. Again, bigger volume steps back in. It's pretty clear. Here we go. Bigger volume steps back in. Here we start to break out. Okay, we try, but it just cannot do it. We're double topped here for the most part. Can't get above this other local. And again, the initiative comes back to the sellers because buyers could not take control. Sellers step back in. They were resting there for the most part. You see the reversal right here. And then we fall back and try to target these lows. Correct? Right? Dies down a little bit. Yet again, relatively average volume. Not so much, in terms of price action, though. We're sideways for a bit. And again, here we go. Let's look at it. We start to get a bigger relative volume come back into the market as we cannot extend higher. We crack this NPOC. And what you notice here is as we fail, okay, the volume starts to pick up. We're failing and volume is picking up. That's not a good sign. So clearly, okay, let's look at this candle, or excuse me, this cluster right here. If we drew a line down to here, we see it's trying, like here, look, small anemic volume. Okay, we're trying to get these traders to have the feeling that a big breakout's going to come, but ultimately it's a trap. Because what happens right here, we get that VWAP cross, slope change. We start to fall now on big volume, very big. Okay, and then the big death candle, right, happens on huge volume. So you notice, can't get above, completely topped, right? And then we start to reverse on bigger volume, on much bigger volume. So we trapped or not we, but market traps a bunch of people here waiting for this, okay? Waiting for this to occur, which never happens, okay? And what does happen is we get all the telltale signs of a reversal, okay? We fake people out, go a little higher even from here on the next hourly cluster, tiny bit higher, okay? Not much higher, tiny bit, and then the floor falls out, okay? You get the NPOC here just to show that there's signs of another NPOC here, signs of reversals, okay? So we've officially trapped a bunch of people up here, right? Long. We've trapped a bunch of people at the top, and then we bring it down a good $2,000 on them, skin them alive on big volume. So what does that tell you? That shows you that you really need to be aware of your trigger range, or excuse me, your trigger points, right? Your entries. Where are these volume breakouts triggering from? Okay, so right here we knew this was our trigger. We saw this NPOC as our trigger line. We were waiting for a break above it, waiting for a break above it, waiting for a break above it. Never happened. It finally happens. Okay, the volume starts to pick up because, as you can see, very, very anemic, relatively speaking. Bigger, but again, not really bigger because on a relative basis, this is average. So we get this average volume coming in. It's higher than the previous, like, I don't even know how many hours period. So people get aggressive, try to chase it. We finally get above MPOC. Okay. We close this out pretty positively. Big volume, or excuse me, big extension. You know, the bar is the body of the candle, doesn't leave a huge wick on either end. It's okay. It looks good. So you get people into this false sense of security. Volume starts to increase as we start to go a little bit higher, right? We're starting to go a little bit higher. Volume's increasing. But here's the funny part about it is that they're trapping. This is a trap. And what happens is the floor falls out as VWAP starts to shift to the downside. So you get this one ticker, it starts to fall down on bigger volume. You create the NPOC in the process, which is ugly, not a good sign. Then you get another big extension down on much bigger volume, another candle coming in on more average volume, but again creates MPOC. Another candle on much bigger volume, and now you've officially trapped people looking for this move higher, waiting for a volume breakout. But it was a lower volume breakout which retested not only the mean, right, but it reverted back to lower prices that were more generally accepted prior to this pump over 47K. Okay, so that is the real difference here. And then when you look back a little or going forward in time now a little bit more, okay, we look now here and we see that okay, again, we're looking for some kind of area of absorption. Looks like for a bit it's going to happen, but then again, this is on relatively, average volume, lower volume. The bigger volume comes back in over here, okay? And what we notice is that, again, we're going to extend the range down on big volume. Buyers step back in. But again, not huge volume, average volume. Step back in on average volume. Price starts to appreciate again, but let's look. Average to lower volume, relatively speaking. Okay? We get the reversal signs, MPOC, all that good stuff. Eventually, volume does come back in, all right? And if you were looking for a bottom, if you were going bottom hunting, you probably weren't too excited to dip by this candle, right? Or even this one for the, oh my God, it's terrible. Or even this one, because again, nothing to write home about volume wise. It does start to move higher. We're at 44 and change. It moves up not much, a little bit. So it's comforting to see. Not a crazy slope change either in VWAP. So that's another component to keep an eye on. But what we do see is once we find a little bit of a top here, we go sideways, find some support. We do get some volume come back in. We start to extend the range yet again. And then on big volume, the big volume, we see here that we aggressively are trying to target NPOC at 47K now because we broke the previous from where we broke down originally. So we get people ready to target higher again on big volume. But what happens is that this was like the top of that move for the most part, right? Because we died after that, even though this was on big volume. All right, we couldn't really get this. This was the end of the move. We had the move already starting. If you caught the bottom at 44.7 and you rode it to 46.7, that's a great trade. So you crushed that if you were looking for this and executed the right way, and you knew that okay, maybe this wasn't the best dip buying area based on the fact that really all you gave up was about couple of $100, not even like $1,000 worth of entry. Because what happens here is that this could have easily continued lower and gone after this NPOC. We do get a little bit more of a revert back to the mean here, and then ultimately we start moving higher, only a few $100 above where we bottomed out here, and we do catch, like I said, 44.6 to 46.7. So a very good move. So if you waited and you knew what you were looking for, you crushed. Congratulations. Young Wall Street loves you because you are the GOAT and you understand the concepts that we're teaching you. Again, volume dies again. All right, this is we're going to get repetitive a little bit here because it's that simple. This is all it is that we're looking, it's nuance. It's looking for what is going to initiate a move in either direction, right? So let's look at it like that yet again, okay? Volume dies out, we top, can't crack NPOC, start to dip down, can't crack this NPOC. So now we're caught between these two low volume areas, okay, which is why all the volume is here and not here and here just yet, right? Go sideways. But look at this, okay? Look at these. We start to pull away again. We crack NPOC. Okay, it looks like we want to run higher, okay? But what are we noticing about this and this, relatively speaking? It's higher volume, but it's not the crazy volume that's going to take us much higher as we've previously seen, okay? So what happens? It's a fake out, not a breakout, and we start to fall back into the mean yet again, okay? And continue on. So that's really it. I mean, if you notice, nothing really to write home about. You do get a few of these here and there, more or less. You get a couple of these little pump fakes in both directions. This is on bigger volume, so we're moving from about 46.5 to about 45.5. That's a decent move in one candle, right? And especially an hourly candle. So that's what we're looking for here. And then if you notice, all of this is kind of at relatively average, speaking from looking back how many days, weeks, we're looking at the average volume and what's considered anemic, what's considered average, what's considered high volume. So with that being said, we drifted down on bigger volume, found the floor, cracked this previous NPOC from the move back higher, okay? So again, taking out these low volume areas that were support, finding that support, trying to reverse, can't really do it. Again, stuck in this range for the most part. We do get another couple of higher volume moves. This one's interesting because we start to move higher initially, and fail on big volume as we attack these upper low volume areas where sellers were resting. Not exactly what you want to see as you move higher is a move that is completely rejected and three steps you back on high volume to the lows, right? So that's what we're looking for here as we do some analysis, continue to go sideways. Volume, again, picking, and this is live now. Now we're in real time. Volume is picking back up, comparatively speaking, to these lower volume areas. Try to grind higher, could not do it. Top out, UFA, NPOC, bigger volume right here. Okay, pushing the range lower. We were absorbing all of these down moves for the most part, even the up moves. We just went over it in the previous video, absorbing it all until we got these. You see how we're breaking out in each direction? Okay, we're starting to try to trap people now, how we got somebody looking to go higher, trap them on relatively, decent volume, start to break down. You got UFA, MPOC capping you, bigger volume. But again, even though we broke the the NPOC floor, and we are getting a nice slope change on VWAP, we have been seeing, really couldn't extend the range much more than 45.5. We went over it in the previous video. That's what we were looking for in terms of targeting. So if we were, it's on bigger volume, or on bigger delta, and the volume is pretty skewed negatively for the most part. If we can hold that 45.5 on this type of volume, it would be a good sign that maybe in the interim, 45.5 is a local low. And that would be based on the fact that big volume stepped in. It tried to take us down. We ultimately found an area of support in the low volume area, if you will, with NPOC kind of being that floor that, shows you where the support would be, and trying to ultimately probably trap maybe some shorts coming in that are aggressively pressing, let's say the mid 45K region for a move to 44K, if you will. But I would suspect even if we did continue to increase in volume and start to move lower, you see here even on the open interest, like we're going pretty high on open interest, and long short ratio is increasing. It was a little bit higher, starting to taper off a bit, but still very high on an hourly basis. There is room for this to continue coming down, to especially if we don't see long short ratio continue to increase. Might start to get some air taken out of that as we grind down. Or the flip side of that coin is that volume continues to increase, long short ratio and open interest continue to increase, and longs are just piling in the 45K region. You see them at 44.5 and around NPOC, building up around here, kind of, chasing outside the, the value area a bit, hoping to get filled somewhere in this region, right? Which makes sense. Big range for the most part, about $1,000 or a little bit more. So that's what we're keeping an eye on for now. And that's really all there is to it, guys. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go ahead and share this video if you found it useful with somebody just starting out. Make sure you turn on the notifications so that you don't miss anything that we post as it comes out in real time. Go ahead and join the Discord, because that's really where we are for the most part every day with our community of traders. We definitely get to the YouTube comments as well, but we can answer any questions, comments, concerns, whatever, much quicker in Discord. So make sure you use the link in the description and join our Discord channel. And if you want to leave a comment, feel free to leave a comment. And I hope this video helped, guys. That's really all I've got for today. Stay tuned, because we're coming up on the end of our freshman year of Cignals Trading Academy. Oh, wow. So a little bit longer, and maybe a couple more videos, and we'll wrap this basic first year, if you will, of university up. And within a few weeks, we will have the next semester or year, your sophomore year, ready to rock. So have a great day, and we will see you soon.